I think it's fair and important for all of us MLS viewers, likely everyone watching this video, to sit back and accept that, whether we like it or not, we support a niche league. When you look at the football consumption in this country, MLS is a minnow compared to the likes of the top leagues out there, including the English Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, the Bundesliga, you name it. This is obvious. No one is arguing that, and honestly, I get it. People want to watch the best of the best. Where it gets dicey for me though is that there's a large group in the United States who will be football fans, watch every game overseas, but when it comes to their own country's sporting landscape, they don't want any of it. This is where there are two sides that I'm going to combine here, whether that's right to do or not. But it's the people who actively hate MLS and the people, aka all my friends, who really just couldn't care less about the league. Not out of hatred, but just because they don't care. It's very peculiar that we have two different groups with one commonality being they're American football fans, but they differ on who they're willing to watch. I'm not here to say what's right or what's wrong. I'm just here to give my insight on this whole idea. This is a much more personal video, not research based at all, but I think my experience could relate to a lot of other supporters my age or people who are just now deciding to take a look into our league, even if we follow these other top leagues. What is attractive about MLS that keeps us coming back? Why is it that I've gravitated heavily away from European football to increase my intake on the American League? The question is, why do I love MLS? And to even start dissecting that question, I have to go back in my life to the very beginning. Okay, maybe not the very beginning, but at least to when I started getting involved in sports. At first, I was a baseball kid, till after 1 year I realized I'm not standing in front of that ball being thrown at me 70 plus miles per hour. So I quit and my parents made me join soccer around 2009. At this time, I had no connection to the sport and no one in my family did. No one played, watched, or really knew anything about it. To put things into perspective, one of the more embarrassing moments around this time is when I attended a soccer camp and I was asked who I preferred, Messi or Ronaldo. And as you can tell from my expression, yeah, I didn't know who either of those two guys were. From that, we'll fast forward a little bit more to the first time I actually watched the sport. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I can see it now. It was in a backyard similar to what looks like this, and my friend's mom put on the USMNT match versus Portugal at the 2014 World Cup. It's at this time I found out what the World Cup was, and what blew my mind was that they only got 3 subs per game. I mean, this was life-changing stuff. After that day, I spent the next few weeks diving into this new world. I bought FIFA 14, I watched the World Cup final, I spent hours watching FIFA pack openings trying to learn all of these players. And I also stumbled upon my home state team, Columbus Crew. So, as a young kid, that Christmas, I asked my mother for all the Crew jerseys, and eventually, as you can see from this embarrassing photo, Santa came by with all the Crew merch I could have wanted. But there was one issue. Nobody around me knew who the Crew was. Nobody I knew ever watched their games. In YouTube videos I watched, nobody ever packed Columbus Crew players, and it was honestly like they didn't even exist. So instead, I started a FIFA career mode with a team I did see people talk about. And don't give me slack for this, but my team is and was Manchester City. And I became in love with Sergio Aguero, Vincent Kompany, Yaya Toure, Joe Hart, and then I purchased their kits and watched their games because it's not like any of my friends watched MLS. No, it was about Barcelona, Real Madrid, the Premier League. Now at this time, I still knew what the Crew was doing. I followed their social media, I knew about the rebrand, I saw us get to MLS Cup, and I remember Steve Clark blowing it in that first minute. But that's all it was for me. Other than liking their posts and seeing the occasional game, I didn't actually pay too much attention because no one else cared. But then, the turning point, my first Columbus Crew game. Again, keep in mind that even though the Crew are my local club, that doesn't mean they're close to me at all. A 4-hour round trip for a 90-minute match just wasn't something that was easily possible at this time. But I guess all the stars aligned one week because a few friends decided to head down to a Crew game, and it was the game. I'm talking about the first game after Anthony Precourt threatened to move the team to Austin. 2017, first round playoff game against Toronto FC. the midst of the biggest sporting relocation scandal in American sports history. I'm talking about the iconic Respect Your Roots banner, the FU pre-court chants, and the whole Save the Crew initiative. And I think all of that got the ball rolling for me. Still though, this was just me first getting onto this MLS boat. My friends weren't too bothered still, and to be honest, that made me not want to be either. I continued primarily watching Manchester City in the Premier League, while every so often trying to catch a Crew game or convince people to go down with me for another. In short spurts, yeah, I got friends to watch the big Crew playoff games, like that shootout in Atlanta, DC, but it was only those massive moments for me that I could catch. Those moments though transpired into something bigger, and with attending more games and seeing the team somewhat regularly, I was bought in to the point I became a season ticket member in 2021. It was this slow process that snowballed for me, from when I first got into the sport and asked for that Crew jersey, to when I went to my first game, to when I started searching for them on my own, and to now being a 3-time season ticket member who's been to home and away matches. Now, falling in love with not only Columbus Crew, but MLS is not something that just happens. There has to be reasons to this. And now, after diving into that backstory, we circle back to the original question. Why do I love MLS? I think like most, especially young fans 10 years ago, fell in love with the Premier League. I mean, it's where all the news comes from and all the top players go, so it's easy to understand why so many people solely pay attention to it. But for me personally, it was only a matter of time until I realized I had no true connection to Manchester City. I could watch all of the games I wanted to of theirs, but I would never truly understand what the team meant to its city and how the players represent its people. Insert overplayed Man City has no fans joke here, but seriously, I could never get involved with the club. I could never feel like a true supporter, and I could never have a personal attachment with them. They're a whole ocean away in a city I could only dream of visiting, and I knew this sport that we invest so much time into had much more potential than just me living through a television screen. To really feel a part of something, I think you have to experience it. You have to live in it. You have to find some way to connect on a deeper level. And I was able to find that with the Crew, a place I could physically visit, a place I could go and feel the emotions after a victory and taste defeat after that 90th minute goal. I've developed actual connections to the players through seeing them at the stadium, catching alumni around the grounds, and if you're lucky like I was, sometimes you may even get a souvenir here and there. The point is, I love MLS and I love the Crew because I've been able to connect to the teams and players in this league. I feel a part of something, and I hope that grows even more on a personal and professional level. On top of all that, supporting a team from our domestic league, I feel like I'm buying into the future of the sport in the United States. I fully understand supporting teams in Europe, but why not also follow a team from your home? I always think it's funny when people say they don't watch MLS because it's not one of the best leagues. Well, the fact is, in order for it to grow and possibly become one of the best, people need to give it a chance and let it develop. Nothing ever started off being top of the line. It takes years and decades for things to reach their potential. And I, for one, want to be part of the progression with domestic football in the United States. Whether it's MLS or not, I support soccer in this country. From USL to NISA to the NPSL and my boys Cleveland SC, I want all of these leagues to succeed because when they do, I know people will finally accept them. Another thing I hear all the time is that MLS isn't authentic, or that the supporter groups aren't authentic. Part of this I can't defend because there are definitely issues regarding the closed market franchise setup we see in this league. But on the supporter side, I'm not buying it. We are the people who get to make it authentic. I'm buying into a project where I see MLS now, and I want to be part of the journey that brings it to where I feel like it should be and can be. Maybe it's different perspectives, but I'd rather be one of the people who can help create a culture than one who joins in after the culture is created. I can't think of another sport at this level where you can have a real impact on how it will develop. MLS may not be looked at with kind eyes by the majority of football fans, but there's no doubt it's viewed much more positively than it was 2 decades ago, a decade ago, and heck, even 5 years ago. MLS is growing at an insane rate, not only just level-wise, but also on the global market. We've seen consistent sales over to Europe for the past few years, and that's only the beginning. When people ask me why I follow MLS, this is why. Not only is the league developing at a fast rate, but it's also a chance to have an impact on the sport in our country. Along with that, I get to be a part of something. I get to develop friendships with people in the community, feel the energy of the players, and be part of something bigger. Whether you follow MLS or not, you can't deny that there's just that little bit extra to following a localized club compared to a random team you selected overseas. At this point, I know there is still a huge number of football fans who couldn't care less about MLS, but I do really believe that one day that tide will turn.